Led by grace, you are the sanctuary. Before I ever took my first breath, I was already fighting to live. My mother struggled through her pregnancy, and I came into this world 5 months too early. The doctors didn't expect me to survive, but I did. I came into this world already surviving, and for most of my life, that's what I knew how to do, survive. The silent child. I grew up in church. And not because my parents didn't love me, they did. But because, like many church kids, I learned to hide pain. I lived through years of abuse without ever telling a soul. I carried secrets inside of me that my body remembered even when my mind couldn't. When you grow up surrounded by eyes that watch and judge, you learn to smile through pain. You learn to be strong even when you're breaking. That's what I did. And all those unspoken wounds, they lived in my cells. They became my illness later in life. Paul, my first safe space. At 21, I married Paul. For the first time in my life, I knew what safety felt like. He was my first safe place. We built a beautiful life together, 2 daughters, a handful of dogs, and a love that would become the anchor through everything. But even through those years, my body would still collapse. In and out of sickness, I didn't know it then, but I was carrying my childhood trauma in my body, unprocessed, unseen, and no doctor could explain it, until eventually they removed my thyroid, my voice, without understanding why. It took me decades to realize my body had been speaking what my mouth could not. The unthinkable loss. On Mother's Day of 2018, everything changed. Paul was killed in a car accident by an 18-year-old who had fallen asleep at the wheel. In a single moment, my safe place was gone. I didn't blame him. By that time, I had learned enough about the universe to understand that everything is working out for our soul's growth, even when it doesn't make sense to our human hearts. But from the physical side, I was shattered. I didn't know how to breathe without him. The meeting of 2 healers. A year later, during a time of healing and travel, I met Frank. I wasn't looking for love. I didn't believe I'd ever marry again, but he was different. Frank was a life coach, and he saw me, not the pain, not the brokenness, but the woman still standing in the ashes. We met at a workshop where both of us were healing our hearts. 2 years later, we were married, and 2 days after our wedding, I became completely bedbound. For the second time in my life, I could not move, not even lift my head off the pillow. For a year, I lived in bed, completely dependent, uncertain, and terrified. The bedbound years. Doctors gave me names: ME, CFS, Lyme, mold toxicity, fibromyalgia. They gave me pills, protocols, and pity, but none of them could touch the soul of my suffering. I had over 300 symptoms, waves of pain and sensations that no one could explain. And when the medical world gave up, I said no, I will find another way. And that's when something shifted. I began to learn about trauma, the nervous system, and the body's innate intelligence. I learned that healing is not something we do, it's something we allow. The spiritual turning point. Through energy medicine, somatic practices, EFT, brain retraining, and prayer, I began to awaken, and then life tested me again. Frank was diagnosed with multiple myeloma. I became his caregiver while still fighting to regain my own strength. Every time I rose, he fell, and every time I helped him rise, I fell again. It was a rhythm of love and loss, of giving everything we had to each other. Until Christmas 2023, Frank took his last breath, and I knew this. I could not let grief take me to bed again. I had to grieve differently, consciously. The rebirth. Through grief, illness, and loss, Love by Grace was born. Because when I finally surrendered, when I gave myself permission to rest, to be human, to be held, I felt something holy. Grace. Grace that didn't require perfection. Grace that didn't ask me to earn it. Grace that simply said, "You are the sanctuary." And in that moment, my body began to heal. The cells that once held trauma began to hold light. Because love heals, presence heals, grace heals. Why Led by Grace exists. Also known as Loved by Grace. Love by Grace exists to remind you of that same truth. That healing is not outside of you, it's within you. That your body already knows how to return to safety. That your spirit remembers the way home. Here I share the tools that saved my life. Somatic experiencing to reconnect with the body. EFT and energy medicine to release emotions safely. Brain retraining to rewire patterns of fear into peace. The Love Method, a pathway that came through divine guidance, spiritual reflections from Kabbalah, A Course in Miracles, Taoism, and ancient wisdom, translated through lived experience, not theory. This isn't a religious channel. This is a human one. You get to use your own faith. You get to choose what works for you. I simply share what worked for me and the miracles that continue to unfold when we stop hiding our light and start loving by grace or leading by grace. I was born 5 months too early, but maybe I came early to remind you that you can make it too, that you are not broken, you are becoming, that you are not lost, you are leading, that you are the sanctuary you've been searching for. Welcome to Love by Grace. Allow yourself to be led by grace and welcome home to yourself. Thank you. This is Sylvia Aubrey Love de los Santos Rodriguez with a Q,